Most people confuse attraction with connection. Attraction fades, but when someone feels a soul connection with you, that never leaves them. And here's the twist. You don't even have to guess. There are very specific signs that reveal it, and once you notice them, you'll never question where you stand again. Let's break them down. First, when someone feels that deeper bond, there's a magnetic pull. They're drawn to you in ways they can't explain, and they don't fight it. Second, comfort. Pure comfort. They don't need to impress you with a mask. Around you, they can be messy, quiet, silly, vulnerable, and they know it's safe. Third, you'll notice an unspoken language. The looks, the unfinished sentences, the way you just know what they meant without a word. That's not luck, that's alignment. And here's a big one. Time feels different. With them, hours fly like minutes. But when you're apart, even a short gap feels heavy. Before I give you the rest of the signs, pause for a second. If this is already striking a chord, hit the like button. It not only tells me this helped you, but it lets more people find this message too. And if you want more insights like this, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next piece that could shift your whole perspective. There are encounters and then there are collisions of essence. Times when another person doesn't just enter your story but stirs something at the deepest part of who you are. You can't explain it with logic. You can't measure it with surface level checklists. It's not only attraction or even compatibility, it's about recognition. Something in them feels strangely familiar, but not in a way that links to your past. It feels like home in a place you've never visited. That's what a soul connection is. And when it arrives, you'll know, not only by how you feel, but by what starts to unfold around you. Because this kind of bond does not stay hidden. It declares itself through patterns, through intensity, through an undeniable shift inside your inner world. You start to notice signs, subtle yet strong, that this is not just another person. This is someone your soul has been waiting for. And when they feel that same pull with you, those signs appear too. Not always loud, not always clear, but always real, always meaningful. And if you're awake enough, honest enough, and brave enough, you'll recognize them for what they are. Proof that this moment, this person, this bond means more than any words could ever explain. There is something deeply mysterious about human connection. Something that resists explanation, even while it asks to be understood. When two people meet and an unspoken link locks into place, it's not just chemistry, nor is it simple attraction. It's as though two frequencies align, creating a harmony that cuts through all the noise of life. This isn't about grand gestures or planned speeches. It's about a quiet pull, a gravity that doesn't need validation from the outside world. It's felt in stillness, in silence, in the pauses between the words. When someone feels a soul bond with you, this kind of emotional harmony becomes impossible to ignore. You've likely had conversations where your words went unheard, where you had to explain every feeling, defend every response. Now, compare that to the kind of exchange where you barely say anything, yet you're fully understood, where a glance across the room says everything. That is what a soul connection does. It makes you feel seen without needing to shout. It's not about putting up an image. It's about being true and being met with the same raw presence in return. And it's rare. It's not the common thing. And that's exactly why it feels so powerful when it comes. Most relationships work on what's visible: status, appearance, habits, compatibility on paper. But a soul connection ignores all that. It doesn't care for the outer skin. It dives into the inner structure of who you are. You'll notice this when someone starts responding not just to your words, but to the energy behind them. They notice when your tone changes, when your spirit draws back, even when your face has not moved. They sense when something is wrong, not because you told them, but because something in them picked it up. That kind of awareness is not simply a skill, it's a signal a signal that something deeper is happening. This kind of connection isn't something you can plan. You can't scheme your way into it. In fact, the more you try to control or arrange it, the more it slips away. It often surprises you. Maybe in a quiet second, maybe while laughing together, or maybe in shared silence. There's no acting here, no games, no need to impress. You just exist, and they just exist. And somehow the meeting of those two truths feels fuller than anything you've ever known before. That's emotional harmony. The sense that you're moving in rhythm with another person. But here's the twist. It's not always instantly romantic. It doesn't have to be. Sometimes that harmony shows up in moments of deep care or mutual understanding. It's not about needing the other person to make you whole. It's about being fully yourself and seeing that they not only accept it, but are drawn to it. They don't run away from your depth. They don't change the subject when your feelings grow complicated. Instead, they remain steady, still linked, because they're not reacting only to your outside. They're responding to something within you that speaks to something inside them. It's important to see that this silent harmony isn't always easy. It carries a strange vulnerability because being seen that clearly can feel unsettling. It breaks apart defenses you've built for years. It questions the masks you've worn just to survive. And in truth, that's the point. Soul bonds interrupt ordinary emotional patterns. They push you out of autopilot. They demand truth because they make it impossible to hide. When someone feels this bond with you, they don't just notice you, they share in your emotional world, often without knowing exactly why. There's a shared empathy that bypasses logic. You might hear yourself saying things you never planned. You might reveal pieces of yourself you once guarded with cold walls. Not because you were forced, but because you felt safe enough. That sense of safety is everything. When someone has this deep link with you, they don't twist your weaknesses against you. They hold them gently, not from pity but from respect. They know what it means to be fragile in this world. They know most people listen only to reply, not to understand, and they choose differently. They listen in a way that makes you feel whole, true, valued, even with your flaws. And as time goes on, this kind of emotional harmony builds a space where growth becomes possible. You grow not because they change you, but because being with them makes you want to step more into yourself. You're not shrinking to please them. You're widening to meet the depth of the bond. That's the difference. In shallow connections, you shrink to fit in. In soul bonds, you expand to hold the meaning that's forming between you. You'll know someone feels this pull with you when they don't run from your fire. They don't silence your feelings. They don't water down your passion. They lean closer. Not because they have all the solutions, but because they value the link more than the safety of emotional distance. There's no scoreboard, no posturing. Just two people recognizing something that doesn't need to be labeled to be real. That's what makes this kind of connection sacred. It doesn't need explanations. You don't have to prove its worth. You feel it in the way you breathe easier around them. You see it in their eyes when words fall short. You hear it in the pauses, not only in the sentences. And you carry it with you even when they are not near. Because a soul bond is not something you leave behind. It lingers, like a quiet hum under everything else. Something always shifts when such a connection truly exists. Something that resists normal timelines and clear explanations. Time starts to behave in another way. What should feel rushed or dragged out instead becomes natural. It's not that the hours stop moving, it's that you stop noticing them. In the presence of this person, moments widen. Talks continue into the early hours of morning without a trace of tiredness. Silence fills the air, not with discomfort, but with peace. The usual ticking clock that rules our days fades, because something more eternal has entered. That's one of the clearest signs someone feels a soul connection with you. Time loses its control. This is not a dreamy fantasy. It's not about being so taken that you ignore the world. It's about being so aligned that the world no longer feels like something you need to escape. You're not using each other as a cure for boredom or pain. You're grounding one another in a shared experience that feels both endless and present at the same time. That's very rare. Most people live in relationships that are like transactions, built on what's given and what's taken. They clock in and out of emotional exchanges. But when the bond is real, time is no longer currency. It becomes presence. You'll notice this difference when you're apart too. In usual relationships, distance brings doubt, worry, and the need for constant reminders. But a soul connection runs on different rules. The bond doesn't fade in absence. It only grows quiet, like a flame that dims but never goes out. You carry them inside you, not in a way that weighs heavy, but in a way that steadies you. The connection stays constant, like a low hum, always in the background. You don't feel forgotten, even when you haven't spoken for days. You don't feel replaced, even when life pulls you in other directions. There's a calm knowing that what you share is not fragile. It's rooted in something beyond being close in space. This isn't about dependence. It's not about obsessing over someone until they take over your identity. It's about trust. Not only trust in the person, but in the bond itself. You trust the rhythm even when the pace changes. You don't panic when the messages slow down. You don't question your worth when plans shift. Because you're not moving from fear, you're moving from harmony. And that trust is only possible when time has already shown you the depth of what you have. When every shared moment has proved that what's between you can survive silence, distance, and even uncertainty. When someone feels this bond with you, they won't need daily reminders. They won't need constant convincing to stay close. Something in them knows, even when life grows messy. They can be fully caught in their duties, their careers, their personal struggles, and still you live in their inner world. Not as a task, not as an obligation, but as a steady presence, as something sacred they return to when they need to remember who they are and what matters most. And you'll notice the same thing happening in yourself. You won't need their constant presence to feel their importance. You won't rely on them to keep you emotionally alive, because the connection doesn't ask that of you. Instead, it becomes a quiet source of strength, something you draw from, something that reminds you of your depth, your value, and your ability to connect beyond the shallow. And in that way, it makes you more whole, not more dependent. Even when apart, you feel it in the way certain songs touch you differently, in the way you think about conversations long after they ended, in the way your intuition senses their energy without needing proof. There's almost a kind of telepathy that can grow when two souls are tuned together. It's not magical thinking. It's a result of emotional and mental alignment. You begin to sense their needs before they say them. You feel their hurt before they show it. You celebrate their victories even if you weren't present. Because a connection at this level doesn't need physical closeness to stay alive. It lives in the space between time and intention. But that doesn't mean the relationship is without effort. The bond may feel timeless, but the people in it still live inside time. You will still face schedules, duties, disagreements, and missteps. But when the ground is a soul bond, those surface struggles don't break the core. You're able to return to one another without starting over from zero. There's a sense of flow, a shared rhythm that picks up right where it left off, no matter how long the silence lasted. And then you see something even deeper. This kind of connection teaches you patience. Not the kind of patience that holds frustration, but the kind that trusts timing. You stop rushing outcomes. You stop demanding instant clarity. You begin allowing the bond to breathe, to unfold, to show its depth over time. You no longer see time apart as danger. You see it as needed space for reflection, for individual growth, for the bond to deepen naturally. So if you find yourself in a connection where time stands still when you're together and remains sacred even when apart, don't brush it off. Don't overthink it. Until it dies, just notice. Ask yourself, do you feel rushed or do you feel real? Do you feel drained when they leave or do you feel expanded? Do you measure time with them in minutes or in meaning? These answers will tell you more than anything else, because when someone feels a soul connection with you, time will not be your enemy. It becomes your companion, bending quietly around a bond that refuses to shrink into fleeting moments. Most people picture soul bonds as soft, poetic, easy experiences, something sweet and gentle. But the truth is more layered. When someone feels a soul connection with you, it doesn't just soothe, it challenges, it shakes awake parts of you, and what it stirs is not always comfortable. It's your unresolved feelings, your fears, your insecurities, your deep desire to be seen, mixed with your greatest fear of being seen and pushed away. Soul connections carry a kind of growth pressure. They call you into openness. Not because they are smooth or painless, but because they are meaningful. The first intensity can feel heavy. You might ask yourself, why do I feel so much this quickly? That confusion is natural. It's what happens when you're not only meeting another person, but also meeting yourself in their presence. They hold up a mirror, not to judge you, but to reflect the truth you've been avoiding. And the strange part is, it's not even on purpose. They're not trying to fix you or break you apart. They're just being real. And their realness forces you to face your own layers with honesty. That honesty feels both freeing and uncomfortable at the same time. You'll notice this bond stirs up old wounds, not because they're hurting you, but because their presence touches places you haven't healed. You might catch yourself reacting in ways that surprise you, getting defensive, pulling back, or suddenly afraid. That fear doesn't mean the connection is wrong. It means it's deep enough to reach what you've buried. And in that moment, there's a choice. You either retreat into what feels safe, or you lean into growth. If they feel the same soul-level bond with you, they won't punish you for being scared. They won't use your weakness against you or expect you to be perfect. What they'll do instead is stay present. They may challenge you, yes, but never with cruelty. They'll push you to open, to stretch, to be more real than you've ever been. That doesn't always feel soft. Growth rarely does. But it feels right. It feels needed because this kind of connection isn't here to protect your ego. It's here to grow your spirit. You'll find yourself saying things like, I've never told anyone this before. Not because you planned it, but because something in you trusts them with the truth. And once you've let that truth out, whether it's fear, memory, or doubt, the scariest part is over. What happens next becomes the test. Do they stay? Do they flinch? Or do they hold your truth with care, knowing how heavy it was for you to share? That moment after your vulnerability is revealed is when the connection shows its depth. When someone feels a soul bond with you, they don't run from your discomfort. They sit in it with you. They don't rescue you from your pain, because they respect you too much to treat you as if you're broken. But they also don't abandon you to suffer alone. Instead, they stand as a witness, a steady, consistent witness to your unfolding. And in return, you do the same for them. That mutual witnessing, that shared openness, becomes the foundation for intimacy that can't be faked. This isn't always smooth. A soul bond doesn't promise automatic compatibility. It doesn't guarantee instant alignment in routines, life goals, or ways of expressing emotions. In fact, the pull between who you've been and who you're becoming can create friction, but it's purposeful friction. It's the kind that wears down your ego just enough to let your true self out. That's the role of a soul connection. To break what needs breaking and to nurture what's real under the rubble. Many people run from this kind of bond because it feels too strong. They mistake the discomfort for something toxic. But the two are different. Toxicity manipulates and twists. A soul connection reveals and lifts. One traps you in cycles, the other calls you higher, even when it's uncomfortable. You'll know it's a true soul bond when the challenge you feel in their presence isn't about making yourself smaller or quieter. It's about being seen and being held accountable for who you could be if you stopped hiding. You'll notice talks that cut deeper than surface compliments. They'll ask questions that linger with you. They'll speak truths that unsettle the stories you tell yourself, not to hurt, but to wake you. That's what real connection does. It wakes you to your habits, to your potential, and demands you show up fully, not halfway. Over time, something powerful happens. You begin to see that the tension, the challenge, the discomfort was never a threat. It was an invitation. An invitation to grow, not just as a partner, but as a person. And if they feel this bond with you, they'll be growing too. You'll notice them becoming more reflective, more open, more self-aware. It's transformation. This kind of bond can't survive with masks. It demands honesty even when it's messy. It asks for presence even when leaving would be easier. And above all, it calls for accountability, not the harsh kind, but the kind that says, I see you and I believe in who you can become. That's rare, and when it happens, or rather, when it finds you, it doesn't just change your relationship, it shifts your life. So if you feel this kind of soul bond with someone and you feel tested, don't run. Pause. Look deeper. Ask yourself if what you're feeling is fear of being hurt or fear of being fully seen. One points to danger, the other to exposure. And if it's exposure, maybe that's exactly where your healing begins. When someone feels this deep bond with you, it doesn't stay quiet. It starts to show in how they show up. Not through big speeches, not through forced words, but through something far louder. Steady, intentional presence. Their actions reflect an unspoken commitment. You may not have planned the future or named the bond, but their behavior tells you something clear. They are there. In a world full of half-hearted connections, that steady presence speaks the loudest. Most people float through relationships half-present. They show up when it's easy, disappear when things get heavy, and give just enough attention to keep the illusion alive. But when the bond is real, when it runs deep, something shifts. That person doesn't hover on the surface of your life. They step inside it, not to control it, not to consume it, but to live within it fully, consistently, intentionally. Immediately, their presence isn't erratic, their energy isn't confusing, they're not warm one day and cold the next. They don't play with distance or keep you guessing. Their steadiness becomes the evidence. This doesn't mean they never stumble or never feel fear. They're still human, but their bond with you calls something higher from them. Even when they fall short, they return. Even when there's conflict, they seek repair. Even in confusion, they look for clarity. And you begin to see something rare, emotional responsibility. The kind that says, I know this bond is not ordinary and I won't treat it as if it is. That awareness doesn't appear often, but when it does, it says everything. You'll notice it first in the small things. The way they listen, not just to reply, but to truly hear. The way they remember details, not to impress, but because they care. The way they show up when it matters, even when you never ask. It's never about being flawless, it's about being present. And true presence doesn't demand attention, it gives it freely. A deep soul bond doesn't always need words. It shows itself through the steady act of showing up, even when life feels heavy, even when emotions are difficult to describe. When someone feels this type of connection with you, you naturally become a priority. Not because of duty, not out of fear of losing you, but because their heart knows where it feels at home. They begin to shape their life in ways that make space for you. Not because they must, not because you're a burden, but because to them, you are part of their world's design. You're not squeezed in where convenient, you are the space they want to live in. That choice is not casual, it's intentional, and you'll sense the change inside yourself as well. You'll no longer feel the need to chase, to plead, to constantly explain why you matter. You won't waste energy decoding their tone or silence. You won't keep guessing where you stand. Slowly, chaos gets replaced with clarity. Anxiety gives way to calmness. Not because fear disappears forever, but because consistency builds something strong enough to quiet it. That's the true beauty of a soul connection. It doesn't erase fear, but it teaches you that love can be stronger than fear. Consistency in this kind of bond isn't dull routine. It's not the boring loop of habits. It's depth that grows roots. It's presence that adapts, shifts, and evolves with you. They keep talking as things change. They don't vanish when you show them your raw truth. They lean in, they adjust, they remain. And it's not an act or a role they're playing. You can feel when someone is there out of duty versus when they are there out of alignment with their heart. With a soul-level bond, showing up feels natural, not transactional. And when you live in that connection, you start to notice how lines blur and soften. You don't need a crisis to receive care. They check in just because they want to. And over time, you begin to see emotional balance forming. The way they make space for you inspires you to do the same for them. Their steadiness motivates you to be steady too. It's not always perfectly equal, but it is mutual. Both people are working to protect something precious. You don't feel like you're carrying all the weight. You don't question if they'll leave. You don't silence yourself just to keep things peaceful. You both know, consciously or not, that this connection is worth the effort. What's even more powerful is how their consistency starts to heal you. Not by fixing your past or rewriting your story, but by giving you something you may have never truly felt before. Emotional safety. You realize love doesn't have to be messy or unpredictable. Being chosen doesn't have to come with conditions. Real connection doesn't mean walking on eggshells. Their reliability becomes a gentle repair for the parts of you that expected love to hurt. Bit by bit, you not only trust them more, but you trust yourself more. You start to believe you are worth being chosen every single day without having to earn it. And that realization can bring tears, not because they saved you, but because you finally let go of expecting love to always be painful. You stop calling chaos chemistry. You stop believing inconsistency is passion. You know now that love can be calm and still feel deep. Once you've experienced that difference, you can't unsee it. You felt what better feels like. And if you're living in a connection where someone shows up with honesty, with steady care, with presence that doesn't falter when you reveal your true self, notice it. That's rare. That's sacred. That's something far beyond dating checklists or surface-level attraction. It's something your soul recognizes before your mind can even explain it. In a world where people confuse attention for love, control for devotion, and drama for passion, true consistency becomes the most radical form of affection. When someone feels a soul bond with you, they may not always say it in big speeches. They don't have to. Their actions do the speaking. And if you're paying close attention, if you're really listening, you'll understand. You'll know. You'll know not because of a promise they made, but because they made you feel as though a promise wasn't even necessary.